open up to the next clean page in our math notebooks. And we are titling the top 1.4 place value. And today's date, which is 10/13/2020. So 1.4 place value. I know that the 1.4 is to the left of the red line. That's because when I first wrote this, I just wrote the place value and I forgot to put the 1.4. So that was my bad. You do not need to write your 1.4 here. You can write it where it's supposed to be, which is here. But, I mean, if you want to, you can. I also thought it was the 14th when I wrote this, not the 13th. So that's why it's crossed out. 1.4, place value, 10/13/2020. So 5th grade, you might be wondering, okay, Missy, why are we practicing all this place value stuff? The reason being is because we will eventually be starting to add and subtract decimals, which some of you did in 4th grade, but I know that at least for some of you, you did it during virtual learning, so you might not have the best, you might not be able to recall the information as well as you could other things. So we're practicing place value because we're talking about going to the right of a decimal point. We're very comfortable going to the left of a decimal point, but not quite the right. All right, so waiting for voices. You are wasting your own work time right now. And you are wasting your classmates' work time right now. All right, so we're going to get straight into practice, and I want you to write this number. So the way we say this number is 1,809 and 12 hundredths. 1,809 and 12 hundredths. Now, you may notice that I underlined each digit with a red pen. You can decide if you want to do that. When we kind of go down a little bit, you might like why I did that. But you don't have to right now if you don't want to. No, I want you to write it next to practice. That's okay. And again, it wouldn't have to be in red, but I mean, you might want to underline each digit. We'll see. All right, so practicing, and the number we're going to be using at first for practice is 1,809 and 12 hundredths. Did you guys know that there are multiple ways to write a number? They're called forms. Does anyone remember the name of some forms? Who can tell me one form? Yosef? Expanded form is one. Who can tell me another? Frankie. Word form is another. Who can tell me the third and final one? Layla? It technically is number form, but it has a specific name. Richie? Standard form. Expanded form, standard form, and word form. Almost forgot that one. So, with our number here, first, we have standard form, and that is just writing the number as it is, with the numbers and the decimal points. The standard form of this number is 1,809, or 1,809.12. That's how we are used to writing our numbers in math, is standard form. So in pink, it says standard form. That's STANDARD, and then form, which is FORM. I know it's a lighter pink. I'll try to use a darker pink next time. So I know my smartboard, my in-person friends can't see it as well. So standard form, that's how we usually write our numbers. We use numbers if we go into from like the units to the thousands, we would add a comma. If we're going to the right of the ones place, we would add a decimal. Right? That's pretty standard, right? Yeah. Anyone catch that pun? No. Okay. It totally was. Okay, so standard form, the standard way of writing it, the normal way of writing it. Then we have, are you guys ready to move on to the next one? I heard one no, so I'm going to give you another moment. Finish it up. All right. So the next form is, now this is where I underlined those digits. So do you guys notice how each of my numbers I underlined in red, and down here they're each underlined in red as well? I did that because that helps me keep track of what I've written. So when we write expanded form, we are breaking down the number into its different place values, which is why it's important for us to understand place value. So this 1, it doesn't have a value of 1, does it? It has a value of 1,000. So that 1 represents 1,000, so we're writing 1,000. Then we're adding it to our next digit, our 8. Our 8 isn't worth just 8, is it? It's worth 800, so then we add our 800. Now, in the tens place, I have a 0. Did I include the 0 in expanded form? No, and you don't have to. But if you wanted to, you could then write plus 0. I just chose not to because it's not worth anything. There's no value to the tens place. Then we have a 9. It's in the ones place, so it's worth 9. So then I'm writing plus 9. But then we're adding it to the next one, which is in the tenths place. So then we're adding 0.1. That's the value of the 1, 1/10. Plus, then we have 2 hundredths because it's in the hundredths place. So expanded form, you're expanding the number and you're adding each of its place values together. That's why we call it the expanded form, because we're expanding it. How many of you have seen expanded form before? How many of you have seen this before? Okay. Are we ready to move on to the final one? Okay. Anyone still need this one up? Okay. Zoe, you got another moment. She's gone today. All right. See a few people finishing this up. Okay. Then, I'm just going to scoot this up a little bit. I don't need the header anymore. Then we have word form. So this is when we are writing it out. And you guys, if you ever get stuck on how do I write this in words, think about how you would say the number out loud. So this is 1,809 and 12 hundredths. So that's exactly what you write. 1,000, comma, 809, comma, and 12 hundredths. Do you guys notice how I underlined the and? Why do you think I underlined the and? Why do we think? Addie?
You say and when it's getting to the decimal point.
Yes.
Instead of saying decimal point.
Exactly. You don't say point. You don't say decimal point. You say and. So I want you to underline the word and as well in your notes. So 1,809 and 12 hundredths. How many of you like to say like 1,809? Do any of you like to say that? Okay, the reason why we don't is because when we are saying a number, the only time you should be using and is when you get to the decimal point. Exactly, and it's all together. 809, that is all together. Exactly, so there's no need for an and. We only use the word and when we are at the decimal point. So 1,809 and 12 hundredths. So we only use and when we are at the decimal point. And that's why sometimes, like, I'll be in the drive-thru window, right? And they'll say, or maybe not even the drive-thru window. That's not a good example. I'll be shopping, and if the person says, okay, your total is $110, in my head I'm like thinking 100 decimal point 10, like 110 cents. They're like, no, they mean $110, like all together. Exactly. So that's why, no, it just means that they're used to saying it that way, right? Some of us get used to saying something a certain way, even if it's not technically correct. But starting today, I want you guys to be conscious of that. When you're saying a number, make sure you're not saying and unless it's where the decimal is. Yes, Mackenzie.
Well, it was weird for me when I came here because people always told me not to say and, but in England I learned that's how you're supposed to say the numbers, with an and.
With an and? Interesting.
In between like the hundreds and the thousands and the ones.
Interesting. Yeah, I always find it fascinating how different countries say numbers because there is a difference. Yeah. But here, we only say and when we're at the decimal point. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that way, if someone were to ever, if, I don't know, we did an activity where you were listening to someone and they were telling you a number and you had to write it out, with numbers, that way you would know exactly where that decimal point goes because you'd be listening for the and. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we're going to get into some actual practice. Now, just wait, I'm going to explain. So this was more an example. We're practicing together, right? We're practicing together. Now we're going to get into some actual problems where I'm going to ask you guys to write the form of a word. So, down here. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really not too bad. So, ready to rock? Ready to rock. Okay. Now, for number 1 and 2, I left 1, 2, 3, 4 lines underneath. Why are we talking and making noise? Thank you. So number 1, the number you're using is 715. You will be writing that in the expanded form. Then over here for number 2, the number you're using is 5,200. You are writing that in the word form. I didn't tell you how to spell anything. Then, number 3, you are using 10 and 542 thousandths, and you were supposed to write that in standard form.
That's word form.
So, Jack, you're using this word form to write it in standard form. So if we look back up top, if you were given this number, this is word form, and then if you were to write it in standard form, it would look like that. So you're going from this to that. It's okay, just get it written down for now. So number 3, you're given the word form and you're being asked to write it in numbers, standard form. And then number 4, you're given the expanded form. And now you might be thinking, whoa, Missy, we didn't talk about fractions. I'm not going to explain it to you yet. I want you to think about what you think these two represent. And maybe you got it. That's awesome. I just want to see what you can come up with. Okay? So remember, standard form is in numbers. So number 3 and number 4, you're writing what they give you the way we normally do in standard form with numbers, decimal points, and commas. I just kind of want to see what you can do with number 4 without me first explaining these last 2 parts to you. Yep, write down all this. Make sure you're giving yourself enough space underneath 1 and 2 because you are writing expanded form and word form, which takes up more space than standard form. So give yourself enough space. Then for number 3 and 4, since you're just writing the answer in standard form, which is with numbers, you don't need as much space. Once you have this written down, you can go ahead and solve them, write the form it's asking for. When I will know you are done and ready to check your work as a class when you are reading or working on something quietly at your desk. Capiche? All right, you guys go ahead. Get that written down. And make sure you're spelling thousandths correctly, like thousand, and then THS at the end. And feel free to use the notes you wrote up above on the page. Gosh, why is that so? So you're using the black number. That's the number that you've been given. And then you are writing it in the form that they want. What? Yeah. Standard form. So they've given you, for number 3, they gave you a number in word form, and they want you to write it in standard form. Number 4, you were given a number in expanded expanded form, and you're being asked to write it in standard form. I asked you just go with it. See what you come up with on your own first. Use some of your problem-solving skills. Don't just give up because you're like, I don't know. But think about, okay, as a fraction, how would I say that in my head? And what does that tell you about what place it's in? I won't tell you if it's correct, but great problem-solving skills. Can everyone see what these two are?
Yeah.
So that's 2 over 10 as a fraction plus 5 over 1,000. So when you're done, and you can put a thumbs up on your desk, or you can read quietly or work on something quietly. together. How many of you got tripped up on number 4? How many of you got tripped up on number 4? Okay, that's totally okay. Any voices off? All right, let's look at this together. So, waiting for voices. Okay, so number 1, we had the number 715, and we were supposed to write it in expanded form. Now, if I look back up on my notes, expanded form is when we break apart our number into the different place values. So, if I look at number 1, 715, I would start with the 7. What place is the 7 in? Emmy? 100. So it is 700. So I'd start with writing 700 plus, then I have the 1, and that is worth what? Layla? 10. Frankie, go ahead. Plus 10 plus, and then my 5 is worth what?
5.
It's worth 5, yes. So I expanded my number into the different place values. How many of you got number 1 correct? 700 plus 10 plus 5. Awesome. Drew, sit in your chair correctly, please. All right, then we have number 2. Number 2, we were supposed to write our number in word form. And remember, what can help with word form is just saying the number to yourself. 5,200. That's exactly what you're going to write. So I would start 5,200. And notice I did not use the number 5 to replace the word 5 or the number 2 to replace the word 2. In word form, I should see no numbers. I should just see words. Now, if you had a number that had a decimal in it, I shouldn't even see a decimal point. I should see the word and. Yep. How many of you got number 2 correct? 5,200. How many of you got that correct? Awesome. All right, then we came down to number 3. 10 and 542 thousandths. Now, what I like to do when I'm looking at word form, I like to first find out where that decimal point is, if there is one. Which word tells me where the decimal point is? Tell me on the count of 3. What word tells me where the decimal point is? 1, 2, 3. And. So I'm going to circle it. That is where my decimal is. So if I look to the left of the decimal, or the left of and, I just have 10. So I would start by writing the number 10. Then the word and tells me I have a decimal point. Okay, now I have everything to the right of the decimal point, which you might not feel as comfortable with. 542 thousandths. So you may have looked at this and thought, oh geez, Missy, I don't know how to write this. I want to tell you a little trick, 5th grade. When you are reading a number out loud or seeing it in word form, you're paying attention to what it ends with. Does it end with the word tenths? Does it end with the word hundredths? Or does it end with the word thousandths? Now this one ends with the word thousandths, right? So that tells me that I should be putting numbers in 3 places to the right of our decimal point. Well, if I read the number 542, there are already 3 digits in that number, right? A 5, a 4, and a 2. So I know I can just plug those in, 542, and then I'm double checking. Did I end in the thousandths place, 5th grade? Yes, because we have the tenths, the hundredths, and the thousandths. How many of you got number 3 correct? How many got number 3 correct? Okay. All right. Awesome. Eostis, your book should be put away. Then we have number 4, and I'm going to scoot this up so hopefully it's a little brighter up on the smartboard. Oh, it is. Awesome. Okay, so for number 4, how many of you felt comfortable with the first 4 numbers in the expanded form? Okay, so if we start with that, 3,000, so I'm going to put a comma, 746. Okay, now I have these fractions. Jack P, pay attention. Okay, you guys, if you're ever looking at expanded form, Yes, so I hope you're paying attention. And you have fractions. What I want you to do is say the fraction to yourself. I would say this as 2/10. So what place is the 2 in 5th grade? Layla, it's in the 10th place. That denominator is telling you what place to put it in. So that's not a whole number. It's to the right of our decimal, so I need a decimal. So 2/10. So the 10th place is directly to the right of the decimal, so I'll put a 2. Okay? How about our 5? What place is our 5 in then? If the denominator of this one told us that the 2 was in the 10th place, what place is the 5 in? What do we think? Let's say it all together. 1, 2, 3. Thousandths, because we have 1,000 as our denominator. Now, 5th grade, does the thousandth place come right after the 10th place? No. What do I need to put there then? A 0. If I don't have a number for a place, then I'm putting a 0. And then my 5. Is my 5 in the thousandths place, 5th grade?
Yes.
So then if I say this all together, it would be 3,746 and 205 thousandths. How many of you do those fractions make a little more sense now when you're trying to place the digits in the places? How many does it make a little more sense? Okay, awesome. Okay, Richie, I'm going to tell you your homework first and then you'll be able to go. Here's what you're going to do. You are going to open in your workbook to page 27. 27 in your workbook. Ready to rock? Personally, I like to go over whole numbers first with you guys before we even start getting into decimals. So that's why we went a little bit further in our workbook first, and now we're going back to the beginning. So page 27. All right, here are the numbers you are going to circle for homework. We're on page 27. You are going to circle number 2, number 4, number 9, number 12, and number 16. So I'm going to say it again. We're on page 27 and 28. You are circling number 2, number 4, number 9, number 12, and number 16. And you guys, if you encounter any more fractions, just remember the denominator can tell you what place it's in, but also when you say the fraction itself, that tells you 2/10. So you know it's in the 10th place. Or 5 thousandths. That tells you it's in the thousandth place. Capiche? All right, go ahead, use some time to work. I will turn on work music for you. Nice job today.